Welcome to an emergency episode of the San Jose Hockey Now podcast. I'm Sheng Peng, editor-in-chief of San Jose Hockey Now. You can also find my work at MEC Sharks and on Twitter at Sheng_Peng.
And I'm Keegan and you can find me on Twitter at half-wallhockey.com. Oh, no, Twitter at half_hockey, or on my website, half-wallhockey.com, or at San Jose Hockey Now. I can't tell you how many times we have to edit things out because I mess up that exact phrase.
Or I do, too.
Or you do. So today, we can't really edit, so you're not going to be able to...
breaks today, guys.
Yeah, so you're not going to be able to get the banging intro or outro today. My internet is not very good while I'm on vacation.
Intro that I was.
Yes.
And someone said, "Sheng, you know your intro sounds like a beginning of a porno." And then I replied, "What's wrong with that?"
Yeah, it sounds. It's supposed to get you hyped up, I guess. Anyway, point is, this is the second emergency podcast I've had.
For Yaroslav Askarov.
No, stop it. This is the second.
Can't edit any of this.
No, we can't. This all has to go on immediately. This is the second emergency podcast we've had to do while I'm on vacation at the exact spot. Last year it was Erik Karlsson, and then this year, it's the exact same place. This year it's Yaroslav Askarov. So that's what we're here to talk about today. The details of said trade. Yaroslav Askarov, a 2025 third-round pick, which was originally Colorado's, and Nolan Burke were acquired for the San Jose Sharks. Acquired first-rounder from Vegas in 2025, Magnus, Chrona, David Edstrom.
And the first-round pick that the Sharks are trading, very importantly, it's the Vegas Golden Knights pick. When the Sharks acquired it, it was unprotected for Tomas Hertl, but to the Predators, though, it is top 10 protected. But top 10 protected in the sense that if it lands in the top 10, then the Sharks can choose to give up either their 2025 first round pick, whatever that is, even if it falls outside the top 10, or if it falls in the top 10. They can offer, let's keep it simple, if the Vegas Golden Knights pick lands in the top 10, the Sharks can choose to trade the Predators instead the Sharks 2025 first round pick. Or
basically it's eliminating the odds that whoever gets this Vegas pick is going to be picking higher than the Sharks, essentially. Right. So the Sharks will have the higher of the two picks.
Yeah.
No matter what, pretty much.
Yep.
Which people would say, like, oh, why do you even have to do that? Of course, the Sharks are going to be worse than Vegas, but if Vegas finishes 14th, the Sharks finishes 5th, and Vegas wins the lottery and gets to 4th.
Erik Karlsson, Doug Wilson, Tim Stutzlow rule, whatever you want to call it.
You never know. And the Sharks need a top 5 pick if one of these two are going to be in the top 5. Like, they can't just give it away.
Maybe they both end up in the top 5. That would be hilarious.
Yeah. I mean, at that point, it might be a little bit worrisome that we gave up that much for Askarov, but we'll talk about it.
That's again, that's part of the value. We did talk about this a lot last week, that Vegas pick unprotected has value, the fact that it's unprotected. Once you get to a point where you know that pick is going to be in the 20s, it's a way devalued pick that Nashville wouldn't take as a centerpiece, right? And Nashville is still taking a devalued pick as a centerpiece here, but top 10 protected instead of, say, top 15 or top 20. It's very, very, very important that you take that risk if you're the Sharks. It's a reasonable risk. So even if it blows up in the Sharks' face, I don't think anybody predicts Vegas to be a bottom 5 team, even a bottom 10 team. So I think it's a reasonable risk.
And it's not even like it's a top 10 protected, like they're not going to get a top 10 pick. If both picks are in the top 10, they will get a top 10 pick.
Right.
So, like, it's not a bad, condition, I guess, for the Preds is what I'm trying to say.
It does put the Sharks in a position, though. Sharks fans would be in a position of cheering for the Golden Knights a little bit here. But hey, just think about you're cheering for Tomas Hertl. Most people most Sharks fans still love Tomas Hertl. But anyway, let's get to our overall reactions to this trade, though. We're kind of in the weeds right here. So, Keegan, let's start with you. What is your reaction to this trade? First reaction.
I have a couple things. First, I'm excited.
Yes.
Excited because it's probably the one of, or if not the best goaltending prospect in the world coming to the Sharks in a area of clear need. We have not developed a goaltending prospect in a very good number of years. We drafted 2 this year, but we had basically nobody but Romanov and Chrona for many years. So it feels like it was a natural fit in a player that's super interesting to me. So excitement from like a fan perspective. From a podcast host perspective, we kind of predicted this, so that's also pretty cool. Like at least a little bit. We mentioned
I'm not
specifically.
Give much credit. I think it was very clear that there was a fit here. The Sharks clearly needed a young goaltender of sort of a higher end prospect than what they had, right? And Nashville needed to trade Askarov. He requested a trade, and Nashville has moved on with even July 1st. They moved on without him. They extended Saros, their franchise goalie, and then they signed Scott Wedgwood. So there was not a lot of space in the system for Askarov.
What I'm trying to say is we mentioned specifically the idea of Edstrom in a first for Askarov.
Oh, we did. We did last week.
And then it happened. Which is the second time in 2 weeks that we've talked about a specific trade, CC in a third to the Sharks, and then it happens. And then we're getting closer.
These are fairly. I know. These weren't hard to predict, though. I'll say that. So I'm not gonna.
Mike is listening to the podcast, looking at our ideas.
Pat myself in the back too hard. So
I know. I'm just joking. I thought it was interesting.
I'm just mad because, and I say this. I say this sometimes. And I don't know if people. It's easier to say after the fact, but I only say it when I'm close on it. Actually, my housemate here can confirm because I was telling him. But anyway, though, that I had a beat on this. Someone told me in the morning that had a sense that something was going on. A couple hours before it was announced, but I couldn't get the. I try to play very, very safe. So if I'm not sure, I don't report it. And so hate it. I hate getting beat by Elliot Friedman. I know that's every reporter out there gets beat by Elliot Friedman. So it's the way of the world when you're trying to outbreak Elliot Friedman on news. But I will. So that's my own personal thing. So I'm gonna give myself some credit on because I was on this in the morning. But anyway, though. So
yeah, and then I guess thirdly we can talk about it in a little bit. Just the value of the trade, like how much we had to give up, and then we can kind of quibble about that later. But I think the initial reaction I have is excitement, and then also Mike Grier is just doing all the things that make sense, and it's kind of refreshing. I think that's the way to think it. Every time he makes a move, I'm like, okay, that kind of makes sense. And I like that. And I've said this many times about Mike Grier's moves, but they kind of make sense. And I think that's really cool.
Yep. Yeah. My initial reaction, I love it. I love the swing here. I know I've talked a lot about Askarov's emotions, his maturity, even people who love his talent. That is a legitimate question. So it's not just sort of barking up the tree because he's Russian or I think it is a legitimate concern, but I love the swing here and what you give up. Again, reasonable risk. Vegas pick that probably ends up in the back half of the first round. Probably, you don't know. And you trade Edstrom, who is a very good prospect, underrated prospect, I think, but he's not Musty. He's not Mukuma Doolin.
Yep.
Obviously, he's not Smith or Celebrini. That's not even
he's
in
not
this
Eklund.
Conversation, right? He's not Eklund. And so I think that you can this is a price that you can handle for the potential here. And the potential here is that you have acquired a top 5, top 10 goalie. And again, who knows? Askarov is 22 and the concerns about him are real, but as I've said before, the Sharks must like him a lot. They've done their homework. If getting Nabokov, you would expect to know him well, the whole Russian connection there. And so if you have confidence that they can channel his emotions in a positive way, well, you've got to trust that if you're Mike Grier, right? Those are your goaltending people. Nabokov, Thomas Spear, and Ryan Miller. Those are your goaltending people. So if they tell you that we can work with this kid, and you got to take that swing. And so they took the swing. The payoff is huge if it works out. What they traded out is not as huge as a potential payout, I think. You never know, of course, with the Vegas pick. But so, yeah, I really have no notes on this one, actually. I had notes on Cody Ceci, but I don't know if I have any notes on this one because I like the swing here and I can live with what has been sent out.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like it's anything foundational other than you gave up a hurdle for the pieces that you sent. So he was foundational,
Basically, right.
but he was a little
But
bit past the
foundational for a
aging
different
curve.
team, yeah,
Exactly. He's a little
or a
past the
different
aging
Sharks
curve.
team, right?
So it felt like it's not like you're giving away your top 5 prospects or anything like that, or even a solid member of your team currently. So
I mean, I was at this is where I was wrong and right. That for I think the whole time I've been talking about Askarov, wrote a story a month ago, right? And I said that talking to people, the price was going to be high.
yeah,
Nashville was never in a place where they were forced to give him up, even if he wouldn't report to the Admirals, because they still had a year of control on him, and he was a super talented goalie. And so, even with concerns about his maturity, that there's going to be a market for this guy. There, Mike Grier said it in his press conference just now, but just in general, right? Like you're not going to get a top 1, top 2 goalie prospect in the world
yep.
available to you in trade every day. It just doesn't happen. So even though were questions about him, and also he's not very NHL experienced too, right? So there were real questions about him that were going to cap his value, but the talent is so much there. That there was going to be a large market for him, and so I was convinced talking to people that it was going to cost the Sharks or any team that acquired him a lot.
Yep.
Of course, I suggested Musty, and I suggested the or 2025 Vegas pick, right?
Yeah.
And I've always maintained the same position. If you believe in this guy, then you trade a Musty or you trade that 2025 pick. And they got away. The Sharks got away with this trade without trading Musty
Mistake.
off. And they traded that first round pick, but they got some protection on it. So you're not trading a potential top 10 pick to or you shouldn't be at least.
You're not trading top 5. Basically, like you're not trading a lottery pick. Essentially,
Well, we
you're
don't know. I
trading.
mean, if both picks end up in the
Both.
top 10, then you have
Yeah.
traded a top 10 pick off. But likelihood though, with where the Golden Knights are in their competitive cycle, that you've gotten away with trading that pick with some protection. And so on the balance, it's a good package for Nashville. You get 2 pretty premium assets back in Edstrom and a first. But for the Sharks, though, like you mentioned, it just the high end of that isn't so high, isn't as high as maybe a Musty, isn't as high as an unprotected Vegas first. And so I think you have to be happy about that.
Yeah, it's a risk, but it's not a horrible risk, and you have all of the accumulated wealth of prospects in the past 2 years to be able to do it,
Right.
and that's really interesting. It's the same. It's just a second move in this summer where it's the same thing that when the Sharks had the 14th pick and then he traded up to the 11th pick, and everybody was like, "Oh, he's going to go after a defenseman," and then he did. It seems like it's the same kind of, oh, there's this goalie prospect available, and he goes after it and he gets it. It's just it's a very interesting summer for Mike Grier. Like there's these very obvious good moves for the Sharks prospect pool that he's taking up.
I want to give a reader a shout out. I was reading the comments about the trade on San Jose Hockey Now, and one of my readers, Joseph, I had to think about this more. So I don't. I got to look back at a couple of years ago, but he said that he liked this trade because he felt like Mike Grier has been sort of throwing shit on the wall like a couple of years ago, right? Whereas now, and to your point, that Mike Grier's moves are more directed. There's enough of a foundation there that they need a goalie, go get a goalie. They need a defenseman, a top defensive prospect. They go get that top defensive prospect, right? And it starts with having that foundation of Celebrini and Smith and Eklund. So your forward group looks in a good place finally. But I thought that was an astute comment. And so I want to give credit to Joseph for that. And I think that kind of speaks to what you're saying, right? That maybe last summer it might have been premature to make such directed moves because the Shark system was pretty barren before the 2023 draft. And of course, you knew you were going to have a good pick because you had the 4th overall pick. But before that draft, though, it was kind of like, well, where do the Sharks need help? They need help fucking everywhere.
Yeah.
Right. But now, though, you look at the Sharks and you're like, well, they have a guy that you can identify as a 1C They have a guy that you can identify as a 1CB in Will Smith, or a 2C, or a 1W if he goes on a wing. And then you have other strong forward prospects. Your defense is still a little bit of a question mark. Depends on where Dickinson lands. But hey, they have a swing now at a top pairing guy in Dickinson, which they didn't necessarily have before, unless you really like Mukuma Doolin. But I would say that, yeah, they didn't really have that. And so, and now they have a projected 1-1-1 goalie. So it's there's sort of a balance there. And anyway, it's a lot of credit is to Mike Grier too, because he's built the system up. I was just on Edmonton radio. It just so happened they wanted to ask me about Ty Emberson, but they were happy to have me talk about Yaroslav Askarov.
It was the same time that you were doing it.
They scheduled with me before the Askarov trade, and then when I
jumped on
the show, the trade, yeah, it sort of worked out, right? Yeah. But they asked me how I would grade Mike Grier the last couple of years, right? And I've been, I think I try to be objective and fair, and I think I've managed to. I think I've done that, and so there's been little things that I've mentioned on the air quite a bit that I haven't liked. I don't like how last year's team was constructed, things like that, right? And so I said that if you look at sort of littler moves and whatnot, you might say it's a B or something like that, right? But if you look at the big picture of what Mike Grier was supposed to do when he came on board, and he had saddled with all these contracts, right?
Yes. Yep.
Carlson and Hurdle and Evander Kane still, actually, and a lot of contracts, right? And there's some luck there with Evander Kane, if you want to call it luck, but the Sharks, they got away scot-free on Evander Kane. I still don't know how that happened, but okay.
The league looked at our horrible situation.
Yeah, they're
said,
like, hey,
all right, you get one freebie, it's fine.
Here's a compliance buyout, okay? Under the table compliance buyout. Who knows, right?
It's a freebie.
Way, so the fact is, though, that he got out of those deals, and with Hurdle and with Carlson, he got something of value. And of course, that's a credit to the players too. Obviously, Carlson turning himself from the worst contract in the league into kind of an even value asset, a value of some asset of some value. And credit to also, let's not forget David Quinn and also Mike Grier for helping to get Carlson to that value by setting up a system where it was like a playground for Erik Karlsson to play with. Just go at it, play your game, stretch passes, do them. We're not going to play the tightest of defenses. Just kind of
get your 100 points.
Go get your points, right? And Eric did, so full credit to him. But anyway, so got rid of these big contracts.
Yeah, you turned Erik Karlsson into $10 million of cap space.
Right.
Granlund, Ruta, and Sam Dickinson, and even Jake Wallman, if you think about how you had to maneuver that second round pick. So yeah, all of that, and then you turn Hurdle into real
tangible asset. Oh, this is the part where we talked about. I'm going to run a lap on this one. I told you guys when the Hurdle trade happened that third round picks they're valuable, but they're really not
that
things to not things to do a lot of hand wringing about, right? And we've seen it that Mike Grier has those two third round picks that he lost in the Hurdle trade. He's got 2 third round picks back, and it's not the San Jose third round pick. It won't be as high, but still, third round picks are very, very acquirable. And Mike Grier has already filled that sort of that part of the cupboard pretty quickly, right? And so anyway, so on that part of it, so he got very tangible assets for Tomas Hurdle and Edstrom and that first round pick. And so big picture. So you go back to when Mike Grier takes over in the summer of 2022. The Sharks have no clear number one forward. Love William Eklund, but I don't think he's a franchise forward. They have nothing on defense they have nothing that is a clear top 4 guy on defense, potential top 4 guy, if I recall correctly. And
maybe Merkley was still there, and we thought maybe.
No. Maybe you.
But I've been saying
so.
I did not. First of all, second, I think people would say that he's our best best defender prospect at the time, probably.
Yeah,
and it was not
by default. That's because everybody else was not very good. So, and the goaltending was in about the same place where you're taking shots with guys. I don't like I can't even remember. It was like Sawchenko, I don't know, guys like that, right? You're just taking shots on guys, long shots on guys, right? And so the
Josef
big picture part,
Kochenash is the
right, yeah, Kojanash. I think he was gone, didn't he? He got traded in the Aiden Hill
oh,
anyway.
in the
So
Aiden Hill trade. Yeah, he's
yeah, right.
gone.
But anyway, though, so I guess I think Mike Grier made that trade, so he did trade Kojanash off. So yeah, so when Mike Grier started, Kojanash was still in the system.
That's it.
Anyway,
Yeah.
though, so the big picture of it, it's an A. There's things like I might have done differently, but the big picture of it is that the Sharks prospects pool, center, defense, goaltending, they have a premium goalie, or sorry, a premium prospect at every sort of major position group.
Yep.
And they are actually at this point, I don't know if there's, I don't even look at prospect pools for the rest of the league, but how can you say they have the best center prospect? They have arguably the best goaltending prospect. They have a legit top pairing defensive prospect,
Yep.
potential top pairing guy in Dickinson, and they have depth, especially at forward. And so this is the best prospect pool in the league. And a lot of that again is the rebuild and Mike Grier. So hats off to him. I know Mike said in the press conference, it's got a lot of work for him to do, and there is. The Sharks actually have to start winning games.
Yes.
but though,
yeah,
I think you gotta feel good, right? Like you can go to the Zoom and like you have turned a wasteland of honestly of prospects into, within 2 years, the best prospects pool in the NHL.
I agree. And not only that, you did it without having to handcuff your team for the next 3 years. There's still retention on some of these contracts, but they're not so bad.
Very fair point, which I've been criticized, but that's a good point. Yeah.
But you did this without having to. They can do whatever they want in the next 3 years. If they have the team that they feel is good enough to compete, they can start to make it happen.
Mike Grier did it his way.
Yeah, I love it, and I would agree. It's an A. I would give him an A since he started. And people would argue that there's little bits, and I still think people try and bash Mike Grier way too much, especially online. It's like it doesn't make any sense. He was given the worst situation that you can imagine, for sure.
Right.
And he turned around.
I believe the rumors back then that candidates didn't want to take the job because it was so desperate looking. I looked at it. I mean,
it's awful.
Yeah. I would have taken a job that was offered to me, but I'd have been like,
of course.
I don't think I'm going to last that long at this job. This is like, I better be trying to get, if I was hired as Sharks GM in 2022, I would have been like, I've got to, the day I walk into the door, I got to start looking to taking a step out the door. I need to plan my future.
I mean,
but he long at this job.
But he really has, and this year it was a couple of things. He looked at the goaltending prospect pool and said it was bad. He looked at the defense prospect pool and said we're missing a first line guy or first pairing, and then he looked at the locker room and said it's bad. Like we don't have a lot of good locker room presence, and he addressed all three this entire summer and got celebrating on top of it.
Right.
So.
Right. This summer has been, I would say, exceptional. Obviously there was luck with the lottery ball, so there's no question about that part of it. But yeah, I think all the moves have been, like I said, even the Cody Ceci trade that you don't love. Yeah. I liked it. I gave it in the end, I landed at a B. I probably was being actually a bit hard on Mike on that one because if I don't like I said, I don't think too that highly of Emberson, and they got a better player and they got a pick out of it. So what's to complain about with that, right?
This is true.
But all the other moves, though, the signings I've liked the kind of guys that he's picked up. So yeah, this summer has been to me an A+++.
Yeah, it has. I mean I'm not going to even nitpick. A lot of this stuff has been exactly what the Sharks need, especially in their system. So, like on the back end, and I'm happy. I'm excited. It's interesting. I guess Mike Grier talked about it in his availability, but the dynamic of the three goaltenders going forward, because people are worried, he's not going to report to the AHL, and I think that's dumb. I think he wasn't going to report to the AHL for the Predators. There's no indication that he's not going to do that for the Sharks.
Right. I think he does believe he's ready for the NHL, and that's part of probably one of the things that precipitated this trade. I think that if he was more willing to back up for a couple of years, I think Nashville might have done that, because I've talked a lot about how these goalies, these young goalies like Askarov, they accrue value. They play 20 games, they play well in NHL. So yeah, so it could have been a good win for both sides. But I can also see his point of view where, okay, that's great. I can be underpaid for a year or two in Nashville, but like I'm never gonna be the starter here.
Mm.
And so let me go somewhere where I at least have a chance to do it. I think I'm ready. Maybe you don't think so yet, but hey, I at least want a chance to show it. Askarov could have gone to camp and played lights out, put up a 950 save percentage, and Charles could have 850. And guess who's going to be the opening night starter in Nashville? It's going to
The
be
guy
Saros.
making $8 million or whatever.
And so that is got to be a little discouraging. Whereas in San Jose, okay, if I get outplayed by Blackwood and Vanecek in camp, that's fine, and I'll go to Barracuda, and there's a path for me though.
Yeah, and not only there's a path, he's now the longest contracted goalie for the Sharks.
He is. That's a good point, right? You're right. The Sharks signed him after that trade to 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
Starts after this season. He's still on his ELC. So then 2 years after that, I think the AAV is $2 million. So that's a good kind of bridge deal for him. That if he starts to kind of sow his oats, so to speak, and becomes the starter in San Jose, that he's going to get himself a nice contract at the end of that in 3 years. But for now, the Sharks have him at a very low rate. And so, yeah, that works out for everybody there too. And so, yeah.
And he's still an RFA at the end of it as well. So he's still going to have his rights retained. So
Right. So, yeah, it definitely is a different situation. I mean, I thought it was a fair question to wonder if he would report or not. Because sometimes, a guy might think I'm so ready that I'm not going to go at all. But it sounds like that conversation has been had between Mike Grier and Askarov and his agent Dan Milstein, and it's like, okay, Mike said no issues if he has to go down there, and so that's all you want to hear. That the guy will do it if it's deserved. I think again with Askarov, and I'm just putting words in his mouth, but like I said, he could outperform Saros by like a mile, so many miles in camp, and guess what? Saros is still your opening night guy, right? Yeah. And so I think there was some concern there, but it sounds like that has been dealt with. So I wonder what's going to happen there. You can see they can sneak in, they can try to sneak Vanecek or Blackwood depending on who is if one of those two incumbents are not quite as good in camp. Try to sneak them in through the minors, and I think you'll be able to get them through the minors because they're a bit expensive, at least for a backup kind of guy, right? No one's really looking for a starter unless you're Vancouver, right? At this point in the off season, so it is kind of interesting kind of options there, and so it does seem like it's going to be closer to a meritocracy here, though. That if Askarov is the best goalie in camp, that he starts the season with the Sharks, which would be exciting. So
yeah, that makes it an open competition, and then one of them could go to the AHL if nobody claims them. Although Blackwood and Vanecek maybe, they're expensive, but
Vanecek's probably the safest one because he's coming off an injury and he's more expensive. Blackwood is a little cheaper, but Blackwood, as talented as he is very, very talented. Don't want to take that away from him. I love that comparison that Warsawski had recently, comparing Blackwood to Gronkowski on skates, and he really is. If you've ever seen Mackenzie up close, he's bigger than all of the defensemen in the Sharks locker room. He is huge. So for a guy to move like he can at his size, that's a very apt comparison. He's very, very talented, but obviously he's dealt with the injury bug quite a bit the last couple of years, and consistency too, right? The last few years too. And so, I think that I think that he would probably pass through waivers too, if we're being honest. We're not, taking off the teal glasses, right? I think he would probably pass through at his cost, but unless someone needs a starter, of course, at the end of training camp, which is possible with injuries and all that stuff. But regardless, though, it's just exciting. We'll see. I think a pretty open competition, though.
Yeah, I'm excited. It's a brand new era of Sharks goaltending. And it's something that you asked Mike Grier on the availability as well, is that they had to, like, what did they ask Ryan Miller and Spears and Evgeny
Nabokov.
Nabokov, like what make sure that they're all on the same page to get Askarov into San Jose, and it sounds like they are. So, my only concern was that the development of a goalie prospect hasn't particularly gone well in San Jose in the past 10 years, decade, 15 years. So we'll have to see, and I'm hopeful that they can get it done.
Askarov is close, so there's not going to be too much developing.
Sure.
Like I said, I've not talked with any. I've talked with, at this point, scouts, agents, executive, like all league people, right? Like at least a half dozen to a dozen about Askarov. Everyone says almost the same thing. The talent is very. There's no questioning the talent.
Absolutely.
The people who love him have questions about the maturity. So even the people who love him, I'll say that I'm going to put out a story about that soon, maybe tomorrow or something. So that's real, but that kind of Mike Grier said he had no concerns, no issues with sort of Askarov's maturity or his emotion, right? And so I think the crux of that is that, like, okay, you talk with Nabokov, Spear, and Miller, right? And I would imagine that they probably said the same things that my people I talked to said. No question about the talent, right? So that emotion can go both ways, right? Like you want somebody who cares. You don't necessarily need a goalie that's like a metronome, that's like a robot there, right? There's nothing wrong with a goalie or a player who cares a lot. So the question, and Mike mentioned it too, that you got to channel that emotion in a positive way, and the Sharks must believe that they can.
Yep.
And I don't know, right? Like I'm not inside there, so I don't profess to know either way on that hand. I just share what I've heard and concerns, right? But I would say this: it doesn't sound like the concerns are so high that he is, like I said, he devalued himself, that he's untradeable. But they might be high enough that this might be why Nashville chose Saros over him. So okay, so it is a real thing. So I think it's a little bit of both, right? That both can be true, that it's a real thing, but it is also something that, especially if you're the Sharks and you have no real options for high-end young goaltending that you can work with. Whereas Nashville might have looked at, this is me speculating, but Nashville might have looked at it like, okay, this guy is incredibly talented. He's maybe a little immature. We have a franchise guy who checks every box in terms of on the ice and off the ice for us already.
Yeah.
So we'll just keep him, even though he's older and going to be more expensive, but we'll just keep him. So they had that option, right? San Jose did not have that option. And so, question marks, but
both can be true at the same time.
Right, both can be true, and I'd imagine Sharks have full confidence in their ability to work with a guy of this talent.
Yeah, and it would be more concerning if Nashville had been able or was okay with selling him for nothing, right? Like
It'd be more concerning if he didn't have the talent.
Or if he wasn't a top 15 pick.
Which, going back to what you talked about, the Sharks' inability to develop a strong starter for at least 15 years. I think their last quality developed goalie was probably Thomas Greiss, which was a long time ago. I think so. And so anyway, but that I think also has to do with the talent level. Like none of the guys they've drafted have gone on to anything elsewhere to make you think like, oh, that it was the Sharks that messed up, right? I mean,
no, I didn't say that it's just them that messed up. It's like both the drafting and the developing bit.
I'm trying to think. I think the only guy that's gone on since Greiss might be like Sateri, but maybe a couple
Grosnick,
games,
maybe.
Right?
It was Grosnick.
Grosnick, I don't know if he was even drafted. He might have been, but still, Stalock, right? But Stalock's not a high-end guy. So anyway, I'm not too worried about that part of it, the development aspect. And also, like I said, the development aspect here isn't so much about on the ice, I think. It's a little bit more about the on the ice in terms of control, right? And emotional control and mature and things like that. So I think it's a little
and the ability to handle stuff like being behind a clear starter.
Right.
And he doesn't have it.
Or playing behind a defense that is going to give the goaltending trouble even this year, even with improvements, right? So things like that, right? Yeah, those are things that can matter, but
it at least is exciting though, and at least it's something that we haven't had to look forward to in a little while. So
Yeah, so someone, I think actually they asked me on that radio spot, is this the Sharks' best goaltending prospect since Nabokov? And I laughed, and I recall Nabokov actually, and you guys listening can fill me in, but I remember Nabokov actually not being that highly rated
Yep.
because he was such a low pick, and what he was kind of unheralded, right? Was kind of a surprise winner of the Calder Trophy when he
Yep.
did win the Calder Trophy, and so I remember Kiprasov and Toskala having a bit more buzz to their name. They were more top prospect types, right? Either way, it's been a really, really long time. And so there's an argument that Askarov is the best Sharks goaltending prospect ever. And he has a chance to be. I mean, I don't think there's any exaggeration that he has the talent to be the Sharks' best ever goalie. Well, obviously that's a lot to put on his shoulders, but that's the talent I think is there for sure.
Yep. It's been there for many, many years. It's yeah, I'm very excited to see how it pans out.
I'm excited too. It just camp is going to be exciting. It's not a fan thing, right? Because I know that I tell you guys a lot. That's not my thing, right? But it's just exciting to see so much real talent out there.
Yep.
As opposed to past years. I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah. And it's also interesting. We now have Shakir Mukhamadullin, we've got Askarov, we've got Danil Gushchin. I mean, obviously Afanaseyev left to go to Russia, but it's interesting the accumulation of Russian prospects, and we got Igor Chernyshev coming over as well.
Right? Yeah.
It's an interesting, because we felt like we were very Sweden heavy for a very long time, and now we're kind of getting a little bit more Russian heavy on our prospects, which is interesting.
Yeah, well, that's a good thing because Russians are probably a little undervalued, right? We talk about this every draft, especially the last couple of years, right? And so, so you want to see them in that area. I think someone mentioned, I don't know how true this is, but that Vanecek and Askarov are very good friends. And so maybe this will get Igor to come back, right? Yeah.
We never saw you. We hardly knew ye. Just
Exactly.
like David Edstrom, we hardly knew ye. I'm a little bit sad for losing Magnus Chrona. I will be honest. Not that I thought Chrona was okay.
I like Magnus, by the way.
Yeah. Well, that's mean then. That's why I like him as a person, and I think
that's cool. Yeah.
I think they had an interesting route to reach the NHL, and I wanted him to. I wanted to get a few more games in San Jose. He had some rough starts. I
think this is a part of not being a fan that is good. Yeah. Like I like the players sort of personally, right? Yeah. But I just sort of think of, does this help the Sharks out as a team? I don't really think about the. Yeah.
Of course, you can never, if you're evaluating these things on a pure value basis, you can't just be emotional. But I'm a little bit sad, and also I just liked the how we got Magnus. I think it was an interesting trade, and he came up, and
that's true.
It's the only goalie that we had to look forward to for many, many years. And
that's true. That was a nice, actually, give credit to Doug there. That was a nice one of Doug's nice last specials there. That and a Barabanov trade, right? To basically get something for nothing. It was only something for nothing. And whatever you think of Chrona and whatever his career is, I mean, they traded Frederick Claesson for him. And with Barabanov, they traded freaking Antti Suomela for him. So no disrespect to Claesson and Suomela, but in NHL terms, they got something for nothing.
Yep. It's also Magnus Chrona is my fiance's favorite player, so she is
has the best
extremely
name in the league,
upset.
So I would say that if in terms of if you're into that in the name part, he has the best name. He might have the best name in the league right now.
He probably does,
and obviously the best nickname. So big time, right? So yes, I do agree with that. So I do actually hope. And I like Magnus, so yes, I don't want anyone to get it. Yeah, I hope he does well, just because I want to see Chrona jerseys and I want to see big time and all that stuff, right?
I didn't even mention this when I mentioned the rest of the thing. Now, if Askarov goes to the AHL, it's Romanov and Askarov as our two goalies, which is interesting to me.
Yeah, well, that's got to be nice for Romanov. I would guess, yeah. So.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of hurts because he now his number one gig in the AHL maybe in question. Like he was like kind of fighting toe to toe with Magnus.
That was not a good spot. Like we talked about this so much though. That was the Sharks were setting themselves up for disaster with Akuda again if they had ran with Chrona and Romanov, right? We talked about this all summer. They really needed a number 3 guy. Now the number 3 guy now might be Askarov or it could be Vanecek.
Yeah.
By the way, though, like that's a nice insurance policy over just hoping that
I mean for
Romanov
specifically, it might be a little bit more concerning to have a guy like Vanecek or Askarov as your person instead of Magnus, right? Like,
well, yeah, but I think if you're Romanov, you have to be realistic though, right? Right now, your goal is just to make the NHL and be an NHL goalie of any sort. You're not necessarily thinking of I'm going to be Hall of Fame. I'm going to be Team Russia's next starter whenever Russia goes back to the Olympics, right? So Askarov's sort of aims are a bit higher, and they should be.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Romanov's are a bit lower, and obviously
the expectations for both are wildly different.
Right. And Romanov, it gives Romanov a kind of a easier playing field to kind of shoot over expectations. So I'm not ruling Romanov out of anything, but just saying that right now, like he shouldn't be too worried about Askarov. He's got to be worried about whatever number of games he plays in AHL, be it 20, 30, 40. If he has to go to Wichita for a little bit, he's got to keep building his resume. So,
yeah. I'm getting dark, and the sun is setting over here.
You're 4 hours ahead, huh?
Yeah. So if I don't have much else to say. I think it's an interesting swing. I think it's a little bit more than I wanted to pay for this, but I understand why they did it, and I don't think it's a bad move. I think it's a good move overall. I just it's if you evaluate every trade as like specific value or just risk based on X, Y, and Z, it might have been a little bit more expensive than I wanted.
What would have made sense to you though? I mean, obviously you want to trade like Chrona straight up for Askarov, but
I meant
realistically, though, what would have been realistic?
A first and a worse prospect than Edstrom would have made. Would made me happy.
Okay.
First
we
and
did talk
Bordelot,
about Beasted,
a first
but I think
and
Edstrom is a little ahead of Beasted. So, and I don't think a Bordelot or a Gushin or something like that was going to cut it. So,
yeah, clearly not. So I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I think it's just it's a little bit more than I would have wanted to pay. But again, I'm not upset with the swing. I think it's an interesting play. Like every trade can't be a fleece, or else every GM would be fired.
Right.
All the time. So like every trade's not like, oh my god, they clearly beat the shit out of this.
I would love this
trade.
for next GM. That's like last GM standing, and every year it's like a picture of the GM that stands on top of a pile of massacred other GMs, and it's like some fantasy art piece. And my career with a Conan sword, like this summer.
I got 5 fleecings out of this.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, but every trade can't be like that, so it's unrealistic to picture them to be like that. So
yeah, I think, and then I would summarize it, not to repeat myself, but that it's a good value trade for both sides, and that the Sharks should be happy that they were able to got the most premium asset out of this trade, unless that Vegas pick turns out to be something that we're not predicting, which is possible. But they got the sort of the no NHL players here yet, but they got the best prospect in this trade, right? They always talk about, did you get the best player out of the trade, right? In this case, they got the best prospect out of this trade. And so, yeah, actually, I'm really excited for our coming soon, our preseason top 10 Sharks prospects rankings.
And I could write out David Edstrom. I had already made a prospect ranking with. I didn't publish it yet, but I was already writing in a David Edstrom into the ranking. So.
Oh, I like Edstrom a lot. I like what I've seen. I like what I've heard. And so Edstrom, I think I've had before in sort of fringe top 5, right? Ahead of Beasted in that range, though. And I will say that my initial guess with Askarov is this is going to be exciting because you can have player number 1 in Celebrini, player number 2 in Smith. And then I think Askarov's going to be higher for I'm just guessing. I don't want to give anything away. I would think about it, talk with people. But I think Askarov's going to be higher than a couple of likely names, I guess I would say. So
yeah, probably even the guy that we I was hesitant to trade him for. Like Musty, he's probably going to be a little bit higher than Musty, I think.
Yeah.
Like if I did my prospect rank.
I mean, again, the way I see him, we talked about this last week, and to close off here, I know you got to get going, but if you believe that Askarov is a future top 10 goalie consistently for the Sharks, right? That has more value than a second line winger and Musty. His ceiling, maybe say if he's a first line winger, different discussion, right? That's more valuable than a kind of a potential really good 3C middle six center in Edstrom, right?
Sure.
That has more value even than Mukumadulin, who I said I wouldn't trade just because he's closer to the league. Like the Sharks need help like right now at defense. But Mukumadulin I see as a middle pairing guy, and top 5, top 10 goalie has more value than that too. Than a strong two-way middle pairing defenseman. And so yeah, like you love the ceiling here again, love the swing.
Yep.
And do this trade. Even if it doesn't work out for the Sharks, you're never going to hear me knock this trade, because this is what Mike is going for is very clear to me here, that he's going for elite talent and goal. And hopefully he can put it all on the ice. But what they're trying to do here makes, it's to me it's an A+ trade. It just makes sense in a lot of ways, and that again, what they gave up makes sense because it's just lower ceiling assets.
Agreed.
So.
And like you mentioned, it's not the time. The original, when Mike Grier came on, it was the accumulation of assets, like get whatever kind of picks you can get as much of you can get.
Right, maybe there's a little throwing the shit on the wall, right?
Yeah, now it's like, okay, get these prospects because sure, maybe E2 Mackenzie will work out. Get these guys. Now it's more targeted, right? They're trying to pick the weakest parts after that, throwing the shit on the wall and trying to find where they need to add. So, and this guy's very close. Like he's 22. He could step right in next year and be in the Sharks forever. So.
I would say that is the big difference with getting, let's say, Adam Gajan or another top prospect, Michael Rabel, right? Like there's so much development pathway, Jacob Fowler, guys like that, right? Who
many years.
Right. It's just, you don't know what's going to, they had good years, they're top prospects, but you just don't know. Whereas Askarov is very much knocking on the door, even if he needs another year or needs a little more seasoning or whatnot, right? Like, so the goaltending voodoo thing is a little less in play here. That's been the wheel of goaltending, just because Askarov is a 2020 first round pick. So Nashville did all the developing. Mitch Horn did all the developing for you. I mean, that's really right.
Yeah.
That's part of it that makes this a little more of a reasonable cost for goaltending, which I know is always risky.
He's already missed out on the, like, he's going to bust at this level or this level or this level. He's already made it to competent AHL goaltender. So he's already passed so many levels of goalies that never make it there.
Right. So I think that helps too, this trade too. And so, I think just exciting. In terms of, we could be talking about years of, I mean, let's just take the other top goalie prospect, like years of Celebrini versus Kaprizov and Askarov versus Wallstedt, right?
Yeah.
And hopefully Dickinson versus Faber, right? Or what? I don't know. I just think of Minnesota just because of Wallstedt, right? But I mean, we'll see what happens. But again, no notes. So.
No notes.
Good job, Mike.
Yeah, I'm giving it a comfortable. If you gave A+, I'll give an A.
Yes. Okay. Wow, you got to be a contrarian. You should be a contrarian. I'm
going to give it an F-. No,
you can't give him that plus.
No, I think again.
You're so mad about losing Ty Emerson, right?
Still mad. Still gonna give it up. No, I think it's enough. It's the Magnus part. No, I'm kidding. It's just every trade can't be an A+, so it's an A. I give it that.
Yeah, not every A+, but this one is. So.
That one is. I love it. All right, let's get out of here. We will be back next week with a real podcast, unless more shit happens. I don't know.
Real podcast. We have an exciting guest too.
We do.
And so next week will be formal. I think Keegan's internet will be better. We'll have an intro, porno intro, porno outro, all that stuff.
Oh, the outro is more like chill vibes at the beach kind of thing.
Oh yeah, it's after copulation. So right. So
Yes, it is. But yes, none of that this time, just because my internet will not support that amount of editing.
Populations.
Yes, it cannot do it. All right. Hope you all have a good week.
That's what she said.
God dang it, Sheng.